difficult to find someone that hasn't been influenced by one of my dad's shows, if not five. I recently, here's some of the shows that he worked on, that he created. Battlestar, Galactica, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Quincy, The Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew Mysteries, BJ and the Bear, The Fall Guy, Magnum P.I., Knight Rider. So these are the popular shows. If you look at all of the shows that he worked on, he was quite extensive. Back when I was about 7 years old, my dad got his star. And the other day shortly after he died last November, I visited his star. A good friend of mine came with me and had all of these different things to put around the star, kind of like a gravesite. So we went and we put some postcards down, a frame of that picture of us, of him receiving the star, some flowers, his favorite Diet Coke that we drank in his honor. And I wasn't quite ready to leave yet, and so we went and sat at the restaurant that's like right there. And what I didn't intend to see was all of the people that would come by and stop and look at the postcards and this man, and they would start to tell stories to each other about what his shows meant to them. And almost every single person that went by had a story to tell. And that just really hit home for me how far the reach of my dad was. That you can almost take anyone off the street and they'll have seen at least one of his shows. Let me put this picture in there too. There's Spencer and I, who went a couple months later after that and visited the star again, kind of by pilgrimage. When he passed, my friend Cable here helped me put up a memorial page, and people just flooded in with their own stories and their own experiences with him, and we got, I think, 1,600 likes on that page, and people are still posting about what he meant to them, and this is just a small cut. So the cool thing about my dad is that he didn't just start, he wasn't just born into being this television producer creating, these huge hits. He was born to a Swedish immigrant who moved to Hollywood, and she was just a single mom. She had 2 failed marriages, so she was trying to raise this boy, and then a second child came along at some point. And she would work all day, and my dad was left home alone with a radio, and that radio would end up influencing the rest of his life, as we will see in this video clip.
I was born at the beginning of World War II. I mean, plus or minus, as I remember my youth. So my father was in the Navy and very quickly disappeared from our scene because he wound up in places like Guadalcanal, which was one of the longest battles in the history of World War II and one of the nastiest. So it fell upon my mother to kind of hold the family together. Moved very early up into the Hollywood area, West Hollywood, and she was from Sweden, born in Blekinge, and worked at a restaurant called the Bit of Sweden. It was very fashionable in those days. It was attended by a lot of celebrities and things, but it was an unfortunate thing to be kind of almost orphaned, because I spent a lot of time alone, but it became possibly the foundation of what later became my career, because there was a little radio that was my companion, and I fell in love with all the various facets of broadcasting.
I apologize, it occurs to me now. I was just so happy to have this up and running. I didn't introduce myself or John up here. So my name is Larson Kingsley. I am Glen Larson's daughter. I'm the 7th of 9 children, born to the first wife, and this is John Webster. He's working on a documentary about my dad with me, and he'll be talking a little bit later, and we will be expecting Richard Hatch in just about halfway through. He's doing signings right now. All right, so from childhood, my dad was always interested in music. He was always writing music, and this would end up being influential in his TV career. He used to, my grandmother that immigrated to Sweden, she was very Mormon. It was very important to her. She was a devout Mormon. And so my dad would play a lot of his music at church. And he ended up building the church, if I recall correctly, that we had the funeral when he passed away. But he had this group of friends that he sang with. They kind of got together sometime between, one kid was in elementary school, I think with him, lived down the street, and in high school there was a talent show, and it was all girls in the talent show, so they were like, we gotta get into this talent show. And so they put together this group specifically for the talent show, and it really just took off from there.
Hi, this is Bruce Belland, co-founder and lead singer of the Four Preps ever since we started recording for Capitol back in the Fab 50s. It all began with a million seller that made musical history. 26 miles across the sea.
Santa Catalina is waiting for me. For millions of Americans in the late 50s, those words were magic, stirring feelings of romance and adventure. The song 26 Miles put Catalina on the map and made the Four Preps household names.
We were four young hotshots of harmony from Hollywood High School who hit the jackpot while still in our teens. Santa Catalina. The idea for this latest Four Preps tour began when PBS invited us to perform on Magic Moments, a musical special saluting the legendary pop hit makers of the past. But then the Preps have always been lucky.
Live from Television City in Hollywood.
Check out our first TV appearances.
Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Rosemary Clooney, Louis Armstrong, and the Four Preps.
Ricky Nelson and the Four Preps.
And then for a while we rubbed shoulders with an old Hollywood High classmate, Ricky Nelson. We did a whole bunch of Ozzie and Harriet shows with Ricky. Those were great times on America's first, most beloved sitcom. Then we took off on our first national tour. There were 35,000 screaming teenagers at our first concert. What an experience. And then suddenly there we were starring opposite a cute little blonde named Gidget, better known as Sandra Dee, in the first Surfer movie.
Although she's just small, just about.
The next thing we knew, we were being introduced on television by a fellow who would become the Four Preps' biggest booster, America's main man of music, Dick Clark.
6 miles, these are the Four Preps.
And we were off and running.
Here are the Four Preps from UCLA.
A terrific follow-up to 26 miles. Once again, the Four Preps with the big man.
The Four Preps form one of the great recording quartets of the country.
And here, one more time, the Four Preps. Yeah!
We've asked four very special guys to recreate that very unique time. Ladies and gentlemen, the Four Preps.
So he was actually pretty successful in not one career, but two careers. And what's interesting about this too is that his music career influenced his TV career. So if you've heard the Battlestar Galactica theme song, if you've heard a lot of the other songs in his TV shows, he wrote them. The Battlestar Galactica theme song, I believe, was nominated for a Grammy. And Fall Guy, he worked with a couple other people to write the Fall Guy theme song, and the Fall Guy was actually sold just based on the theme song. So, that was obviously a long time ago, 50s and 60s, the Four Preps were around. I've asked someone, Spencer Darrenfeld and Brian Stoker, to come and play a couple of their songs. And they've kind of put a little twist on them.
So like she said, we kind of modernized them, brought them a little up to date, because they're good songs. They're still. So we are actually a band called We Can Run. Again, my name is Spencer Darrenfeld. This is Brian. And so we'll go ahead and get to it. And so we were actually doing the two songs that were the biggest, which again were 26 miles. So we'll go ahead and do that one, and then Big Man right after. So.
Miles across the sea, Santa Catalina is waiting for me. Santa Catalina, the island of romance. romance. Oh, so distant, 26 miles away, under trees and girls. Even the Navy, bring it to my island girls. 26 miles, so me if I can swing with my new guitar. I can leave the wings, but I need the guitar for romance. Oh, romance. Tropical heaven out in the ocean, covered with trees and girls. If I had to swim, do it forever, doing double island pearls. 26 miles, bring a bomb, any old thing that'll stay afloat. We were right, we will all promote romance. Oh, romance. 26 miles across the sea, Santa Catalina is waiting for me. Santa Catalina, the island of romance. Oh, Thank you.
started writing while they were on tour. In fact, to go back a little bit, when my grandmother, when he was growing up, when she would come home after a long day of work, she would draw bathwater for herself. And so he had these memories of the comforting sound of bathwater whenever she would come home from work. So he consequently would type to the sound of the running bathwater because it was so comforting to him. My whole childhood was filled with the sound of running bathwater as he typed. And later, maybe to conserve water, he would video record the bathwater running. So there was a video on the TV of bathwater running while he typed. And he would, his favorite places were to write were in Hawaii and on his boat and anywhere near water. But at the funeral, one of his bandmates talked about how he knew my dad would be up late writing because he would hear the running bathwater in the hallway of the hotel room, and he could hear a little clicking. So my dad was trying to write screenplays back then, and at first he ran up against some obstacles. He would have these great story ideas, he'd pitch them, and they'd be like, "We love it. We're gonna have someone else write it, but thank you for the story." And he hung in there, and he was able to work his way up, obviously, and start to create some of his own. There's Spencer's. I'll kind of let him talk about how his television career went.
I'm proudest of the fact that I fell in step with an audience taste level that I knew how to judge and maybe deliver for, and consistently. It wasn't a one shot. It wasn't a lucky this or that. That there's a consistent body of work here that has some symmetry to it in terms of why it worked and how it worked, and it was never a one shot, and it's with the possible exception of the last hour or so of looking at these last shows and say, these aren't going so well. There's nothing that could dent my enthusiasm for how much fun it's been to do this that the audience seems to have enjoyed and enjoyed a lot. So that I'm proudest of the fact that I've been able to do it in the music business. I've been able to do it in television. I'd still like to say maybe I could do it in films. I don't know whether that'll be true in my lifetime. That's a tough business.
There were several starts to work on Battlestar Galactica as a movie, Magnum P.I. as a movie, and I think some others. Manimal, they've talked about making a movie, but unfortunately, Lifetime, that never happened, although obviously Battlestar Galactica was remade into a miniseries. We will have Richard Hatch here in a little bit. Does anyone know the original name of Battlestar Galactica series?
Adam Zarek.
Yes. Again, his mother was very devout Mormon. He didn't go often himself, but his roots were very deeply in Mormon culture and Mormon religion. And a lot of people ask me about this, and I've been in conversations where people have no idea that I'm his daughter, and they'll be like, "Did you hear that the creator of Battlestar Galactica is a Mormon?" I heard that. And so I want to go over some of the facets, some of the comparisons between Battlestar Galactica and Mormon theology. I realize not everyone here is Mormon, but the fact is that my dad did get a lot of his ideas from his beliefs as well as from history. I will let him talk about it a little bit, and then we'll have a little quiz.
It's my pleasure to have been involved in a saga called Battlestar Galactica. Probably one of the most fun projects I was ever associated with. I guess I was influenced by a number of things growing up. You know, I have Mormon origins, but always fascinated by the theories of things, for example, Greek mythology and the pyramids. I loved Von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods. I got fascinated by all those themes, and what emerged was Battlestar Galactica. The fun of this was, let's have these people running from a super race that got out of control, a race of machines. They decide to chase us, and we virtually wind up with a wagon train heading out across space and looking for what they hope would be the planet Earth. It takes a long time to get there, and you have a long time to explore on your way and play out some interesting stories. There's all kinds of theories that you can develop. Are we the results of humanoids coming here at some point, whether they made it with mates or they experimented? There's a lot to be said for the fact that there was a mother civilization long before the Egyptians, similarly the Aztecs and some of the other great tribes and so forth. But there didn't seem to be much cross-pollination between these tribes. It's as if there was a greater source of knowledge. And whether it was Antarctica back down where it belonged as Atlantis or something else, it's reasonable to believe that a planet billions of years old may have floated a civilization or two that was very, very advanced. Well, I once thought to myself, what if heaven is the name of a planet? What if that's where our greater God is that built us such as we are?
Cobalt. Yes. The mother world of all humans. Where life began.
My position on that is that we are robots of a higher God. We are a series of pumps and wiring, much like any other creature that's been created somehow. And we now have the complete DNA recipe for a human being as we know them. I mean, we can now duplicate organs and do all of these things, which really makes us something that could be created in a lab or created by a god. We just sort of drew liberally on things mythological that may or may not have played a part in all of this. It's a little like the Exodus, that big sneak attack was sort of Pearl Harbor in space, and what was left, they figured they had to get away to fight another day. And one of their great hopes was that they might find kindred spirits out there across the universe, but they really don't know exactly where they're going. So that builds in a structure for a series. It's the journey and the trek that's the fun, not the reaching the goal. We played with all the concepts we all grew up with and tried to press them and expand on them. Some shows had heavy underpinning in mythology, and some were, let's just do a good Western episode. You try to do things that are theatrical at the same time. A man who has the keys to, for example, the priesthood, which inspires and helps him to guide the fleet and so forth. That gets into Catholicism and into Mormonism, and we weren't anxious to try to go too far too fast. We didn't want to alienate anybody from their own convictions. We just wanted to throw things out there.
We asked for a sign to take us to Earth, and we asked for safety from Cylon. And look what has been given us, a madman.
Patrick McNee came aboard as a mysterious character who was really mythically, or in reality, supposed to represent the devil. And we once had a shot of him lying in ashes, or so to speak. The studio wanted me to cut away from the shot because they thought maybe it was too on the nose. We shot it, but we didn't air it. We cut it.
Apollo, stop! What are you doing?
Stay back!
I won't stay back. What is it you found?
Jimmy, you don't want to go in there.
Let me go. I want to see.
You don't want to go in there.
I guess I should admit it for the first time on the DVD that what you saw was cloven hooves. We weren't afraid to go with it, get out there in dark and light, even dealt with the possibilities of some translated people who have been translated into perfect beings, and did episodes with a ship of lights. There is a phrase in our theology, which the glory of God is intelligence. As man is, God was, and as God is, man may become. That's another phrase that actually comes from theology, and what it's suggesting is that there's a greater plan afoot for all of us to rise higher and higher. Perhaps run our own planet someday, and be in charge because we did a good job either on Earth or out there in some of those planets. We really had fun experimenting and dabbling with these concepts. The only sorry part is that we didn't get a chance to play long enough.
roll over, waiting for them. We'll go through and do this and we'll go back. Okay, in Battlestar Galactica, the colonies were based on a president and a council or quorum of 12. The two words council and quorum are used synonymously. Where is this found in LDS theology? All of it.
I've been searching for this room for like a half hour. The layout is really weird, how they put this building together. So finding numbers is hard, so I apologize for that.
Oh, you're good.
It's Richard Hatch.
Alright, I'm going to play a little bit.
Sheba, there's not a person aboard the Galactica I wouldn't lay down my life for and do every day.
Sure you can't know everyone as well as you should.
I know the lady you're upset about.
Do you?
I know who she is now. Who or what she may have been before doesn't count for anything. We've all been through a cleansing fire. It stripped every one of us of those things that brought down our world. Only the strong have survived.
Not necessarily. I know there's something about surviving.
It's a lot easier in a cockpit with thrusters and lasers to defend yourself than it is for people back aboard the fleet who must sit and wait. People like Cassiopeia, who work around the clock, piecing together the wounded who aren't lucky enough to get out of the way.
Cassiopeia works in the light station?
Everyone's had to learn to contribute. She's one of our best medics.
All right, Paula. Consider me briefed.
What about convinced?
I don't convince easily. Human weakness is a given. It may lower its profile, as you put it, but it's still there.
What about you? Any weaknesses?
None that'll ever come between us, Captain.
This, I believe, was actually a clip that never made it into the series, but I thought it was a fun one.
Really?
Wow. I don't think it did.
I don't think so either.
So Richard Hatch, yeah, he played Apollo, he played opposite Starbuck, and I invited him on to kind of talk a little bit about what it was like to work on Battlestar Galactica and any experiences he might have had with Glen.
Yeah, how's everybody doing, by the way? Thank you for coming. As you all know, this has kind of been a really kind of interesting, time with so many things happening with Battlestar, and I know that Glen was working on developing a new Battlestar Galactica movie, and this is something I think that should have been done long ago. We actually played the original Battlestar movie on the IMAX at the 25th Battlestar Anniversary Convention, which I co-produced, and it was amazing to watch the original movie on the IMAX. It looked absolutely stunning. The matte paintings could have used a little work, but it was a pristine print, and it looked amazing up there. And I always thought Battlestar belonged to be in the movies, just like Star Wars. Or, in fact, it actually, as we know, went out as a movie all over the world first, before it actually played as a TV series. So, but I can say only this. I think it was Glen's one of his most favorite shows that Glen did. I think it was more of a personal, interest for him. He produced many, many different TV series, but Battlestar had I think a more personal connection for Glen, and he brought a lot of his own, heart and soul and to the scripts, to the stories. Obviously, they wove a lot of LDS, mythology into the story, which at the time I wasn't aware of exactly. I didn't know what was what. I just thought it was really cool. I thought getting sealed, that sounds like a great idea. Little did I know that was forever.
So they say.
Yeah.
So they say.
You don't want to mess that up. You got to crack that up. You got to make sure it's on the right person. But shooting on that show was an incredible experience because we were trying to mount a a theatrical style series on a weekly basis, which at that time had never been attempted before. And, you know, to some of the skeptics of Battlestar, Battlestar was a totally different story than Star Wars, but it was inspired by Star Wars. And what was great was it was a profound, amazing story. It really was. And I only wish that back in that day, networks understood science fiction more and were not so afraid the audience would turn away if they went more into the core story of surviving life and death, surviving basically a Holocaust. And the tribulations, trials, and tribulations of surviving every day in space. For me, it was like Moses and the Israelites, get cast out of a homeland, you traverse, space is like traversing the deserts for 40 years, and you're being tested on every level, and then you find a new homeland. It kind of is a very archetypal story structure, and I was very attracted to that. Plus, I was attracted, and I'm sure this goes very much into Glen's philosophy and religion, is that it was all about family. It was all about family and extended family. And really, that has always attracted me because I grew up with a really wonderful, close family. And family is what gets us through everything. And I love the fact that I got to have a really great relationship with Lauren Green. That's not a bad, a dream to come true. Everybody I knew that grew up with Bonanza would have loved to have had Lauren Green as their father. And I got the opportunity to actually play his son in Battlestar Galactica, and I think he kind of mirrored that family, thing, because he invited everybody on the show to be part of his family. He invited us to his birthdays, Christmas, this, that, didn't matter what it was. We all became part of his extended family, and I love that experience. I had him sitting up at my Christmas parties, which was my big party of the year, and he would always sit up there talking to everybody. And one year I told people, I said, I found out that there was people coming to my party that I didn't recognize. And then somebody told me at one of my Christmas parties that there was a line going down the driveway. I had this long driveway at the time, and then it extended up the street. I go, who are all these people? And they said, everybody has found out that Lauren Green comes to your Christmas parties. And so people were flying in for an opportunity to meet Lauren Green. And the nice part was he would sit there all night long and take the time to meet each and every person that had come to see him. That was the quality of that man. And I can only say also about Glen. Glen kind of had a reputation with his black limo with the shark fin on the back. And it was kind of notorious, here comes, Glen Larson's, and he would, what I loved about Glen was that Glen had a great sense of humor. He was very much a family man, and he made everybody part of his family. And if you ever had a problem with a script, you had a problem with anything, up would come the little black limousine and the shark fin, and you would get in and shut the door, and he would drive around the lot, and you would have your meeting with Glen. And the next day, whatever the problem was resolved. And one time, and this is very funny for me, and I can't remember the name of the episode, but it was an episode that Donald Belisario actually wrote, which was a forerunner to Quantum Leap, where you would have a character project into a different environment, and to everybody else they'd look like somebody else, except to themselves they'd still look like them. And this was kind of an episode that kind of embodied that concept. But I was a little frustrated because I felt after the first 3 or 4 episodes that my character was getting lost and I wanted something more meaningful to do. My thing was never about, I don't have to be the star of the episode. I don't need to have more lines than anybody. I just wanted something more meaningful to do, and I was frustrated because I felt like Starbuck was getting so many opportunities to do things, and I just felt the Apollo character was kind of being neglected a little bit. And so I told Glen this, and this script we'd gotten that Donald Belisario was writing had Dirk Benedict playing the lead again, going off to a planet, having this whole other experience. And I said, Glen, I feel like there needs to be a little bit more, sharing of the story opportunities. and giving the Apollo character something more exciting to do. And that's all I said. I thought, okay, the next script, or within the next couple of scripts, they'll write something, interesting for Apollo to do. Well, that script that had Dirk Benedict's name on it comes back the next morning, and they switched the names. And it was the same dialogue, but they switched Apollo for Starbuck for Apollo. And I thought, oh my God, oh my God.
You just stole Starbucks thunder.
I'm telling you, but actually it was really cool because it worked out. I got a chance, got a chance to work with Donald on that story. And at the same time, I got to do a little more as the character of Apollo because I'm basically portraying another character. And also the writing had been written for Starbucks, so it was kind of a chance for me to step out of the box a little bit, have a little bit of fun. But I was a little shocked and kind of embarrassed, I have to be honest, because how do I explain that to Dirk? I mean, I wasn't trying to steal his thunder or take away something for him to do. I just wanted something more meaningful to do for the Apollo character. So anyway, but Glen was always, like I said, reaching over backwards to accommodate everybody's problem, everybody's issue. He was a wonderful producer, very personable, very hands-on. And of course, everybody can tell you stories about going to his amazing mansion with bowling alleys, he had the most incredible house I've ever seen in my life. And we all went over there for several parties. And Glen was always somebody that loved having people around. He had his family, which he loved, and he had his extended family. And he would invite people over for movie night. And, it just became, like I said, an extended family, which for me has become part of my life. I invite all my friends to get together for a bowling night, for this night or that night. I love the whole sense of camaraderie, and Glen was very much all about that. So it was, like I said, a very inspiring, very challenging, and very exhausting year working on a show that actually took almost 18 months, which was unheard of in television history. There's never been a show that cost that much back in the day. And also, we took 10 to 12 days to shoot episodes because Glen had wanted to have an extra year after the success of Star Wars. They wanted to, the networks were very open to developing new ideas that might be in the same genre as Star Wars. And Glen had written a script previous called Adam's Rib, which was about a journey from Earth to find something else out in the universe that might be capable of colonization. And then he just did a flip on it and decided to, which I thought was brilliant, which was to have a civilization of human beings far out in the universe who were searching for Earth and had a connection to Earth, which I thought was a brilliant twist on the idea. And the network was totally on board with that, except they wanted it now. Here's this new idea, new story. They wanted to really benefit from the excitement of Star Wars. And Glen said, I really want a year to develop it. And they didn't give him the year. And that's where the problems, I think, came in, is that they had to really hurry up and rush things. And putting together a major production like Battlestar was not easy. And originally it was going to be a 7-hour miniseries. And halfway through the movie, we shot the pilot version, 3-hour pilot first, which took about 3 months because it was also being made into a movie, which went around the world. And some of you may remember Sense Around. Did we remember Sense Around, where the walls shake, you can hear everything, reverberate around the theater? So halfway through the filming of the movie, they decided to pick it up as a series. And the problem with that was they didn't have any story arcs developed. They didn't have any of the character arcs developed. Now they had to just hurry up and run trying to put together all these scripts and episodes. So, unfortunately, everything was kind of waiting for scripts to come in, which was, it's not an easy thing to develop all this. Usually you spend months and months before a production season developing all your scripts. But we didn't know until the last minute we were going to be a TV series. And so all of a sudden we're rushing and trying to get through it. So we ended up working 18-hour days, almost 7 days a week, living on the back lot in motorhomes, And again, like I said, one of the things that comes out of that is that you bond as a family, and that kind of helped, I think, on the show, because that sense of family kind of really made the show special. I think everybody can remember, whether you like this story or that story, what you loved was the camaraderie and the chemistry of the characters and that sense of family. And I think that's what really made the show memorable, and that's what made the whole family able to sit down and watch that show. Whether you were 5 years old or 50 or 60, you could sit down and enjoy that show. These days, that's not possible, as you know. These days, you know, the new Battlestar, which I love being on, I thought was brilliant, but that was not a show that you could let the whole family sit down and watch. Yeah.
So we're going to do a Q&A, or do you want, are you ready to, do you want to follow up with anything else?
Yeah, I just want to follow up real quick. I mean, he basically described my childhood. He was workaholic during the day. He was not able to get all those shows done without just working like crazy. And then at night, it was fun time. It was the movies we would screen once or twice a week at the house, and tons of people around. I suspect partly because he did grow up alone with the radio. And so he just surrounded himself with people all the time. It was the black limo to get everywhere. Yeah. We took it to restaurants, to Palm Springs and Fond Memories, and the bowling alley, which I was a terrible bowler for a while, and I was so embarrassed because I grew up with a bowling alley in my home, and I was still terrible. I'm getting better now. Anyway, yeah, I apologize that we kind of stopped with the questions, but we're running short on time, so if you're curious, I know there were some questions before about LDS theology and how it relates to Battlestar, and I have a lot of answers, but I think we're going to have to cut through some of that and take some questions.
Sure.
I need to come up, or can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay. Just loved Richard in both the old and the new Battlestar. How did Glen feel about the new Battlestar?
Do you know?
Yes.
Okay.
He felt like they took a lot of the heart of it out. I think they made it a little bit more, more mainstream, where his was a lot more theological based, mythology based. He called it the Dawson's Creek in space. He felt like it was a lot of drama and a lot of substance. But I'm sure he was happy that they were still running with it and bringing it to a newer audience.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I had seen some interviews, and basically he shared the fact that obviously different time frame, and different time frames beget different kinds of versions of everything. I mean, I think they, after post 9/11, it kind of opened up a whole doorway to explore what you would do with a Holocaust, a Armageddon. What would you do? How would you survive it? And also, the world had gone to a place where television seemed to be willing to go anywhere, to be as provocative and edgy, as necessary, and no holds barred. So I think the one thing that they did do and were able to do that we couldn't do, and we would have, I think, gone into some of the deeper elements of surviving in space, but back in the day, networks and studios weren't very comfortable with that, and they were afraid to alienate the audience with Dirk's cigar. They had issues about that. So, but the one thing I did like is that they could go into the core story of surviving in space and all the logistical nightmares of that. That was a great part. The thing that the original had that was so wonderful was the chemistry of the family, of the characters that were endearing, that you loved and cared about these people. I think what they did with the new Battlestar was they started out showing how fracked up every character was, and then as they evolved it, they were bringing more of the heart into the show, so that you started out not liking the characters and then gradually started to see their humanity and started to care about them. So it was just a different way of coming into it, and also I think Glen has a great sense of humor, and he wove that into the show. And let's face it, one of the ways we deal with adversity is through humor. It's very hard when something becomes too dark because it's too painful to look at. So, that was one of the criticisms of the new show. I love hard-hitting, really down in the dirt drama. I want to see the underbelly of what goes on. But you know, humor is something that really always helps to elevate and helps us to get through the dark times. And Glen had a wonderful sense of humor and wove that through his writing staff into the scripts, and I think that kind of made the show very memorable, and that's why people love the show so much. The chemistry of the characters, the sense of family, and the sense of humor that was woven through it. And we actors had a great time playing it, and I have to say that if you can survive Triad, you know, we can survive any other travesties in space. The girls, by the way, really enjoyed our little Triad outfits. They used to stand behind us and pull our jock straps and snap us in the rear end.
I was wondering how you guys felt about wearing those.
Yes, yeah, those little G-strings, you know, wasn't the easiest thing for us manly men to wear, but we did have a lot of fun playing the game, and we actually got a chance to evolve the game. We actually played with the idea of how we would make it into a real game, you know. And do you know that there are Triad groups that actually play Triad around the country, around the world? Yeah.
Maybe one last question?
So you've actually kind of alluded to it a little bit. Glen added some new words to the sci-fi geek vocabulary, frack, feller guard, and I don't know if it's
garbage.
Any insight into where those came, how you came up with that stuff, and
That's an interesting one. Do you know?
I watched an interview on it, and I'm trying to remember how he came about it, and I don't recall exactly.
But it was a great way around using all those words that people didn't want to hear. But I tell families all the time, your kid's going, oh, frack you, frack this. And everybody's laughing and thinking how charming and cute that is. I go, you do know what that means, don't you? You know?
But how can you get mad at that?
Well, awesome.
Yeah, I think we're done on time, so thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you guys. Thank you.